Well, hello and welcome everyone to our town hall for BrainHealth Project participants. My name is Dr. Julie Fratantoni. I am here with my colleague, Dr. Lori Cook, and we are two of the scientists that get to work on the BrainHealth Project. And we are excited to get to share just more about our research, which is really a request from all of you. I know we've been doing some group coaching calls over the last couple months, and one of the biggest requests was to hear more about the research behind SMART and to also hear about just what we're learning currently through the project in real time. So I'm going to pull up these slides and we'll dive right in. So for those of you who may live in other parts of the world or just not be super familiar, I wanted to just give you the context to know that the Center for Brain Health is a part of the University of Texas at Dallas. And so we are a brain research center, and our mission is to unlock human potential through improved brain health and performance. And so we have done this largely in person with assessments and cognitive training. And our mission was to really go beyond just Dallas and make these cognitive trainings and assessments available to people all over the world, and to be able to scale that and make it so that everyone can really learn how to harness their own brain capacity and potential. And so we're doing that through the Brain Health Project. That is our mission. And so, I also want to give you a little more context too, in terms of just where we fall along the continuum of care. And so we really, we would call this kind of a medical diagnosis or intervention. We would call that boom when something happens. And so we would say our role as the Center for Brain Health is really to the left and to the right of boom. So prior to something happening, we give people strategies and equip you to build resilience, build reserve, so that you can rebound quicker in the event something happens. And then on the other side of boom, that we are there to support rebuilding brain health and giving, again, equipping strategies for how to optimize performance. So we are not medical. We do not provide diagnosis or intervention. But like I said, we do provide strategies to help people be proactive in building resilience or rebuilding brain health. And so our big mission to take this to the corners of the earth is through the Brain Health Project. And I just want to zoom back out and remind you of what our big research goals are, which is to define, measure, and improve brain health across the lifespan. We want to define it because brain health has not been defined really in this way. There's a really wide range of what is healthy for me versus what's healthy for Lori and each of you. And so by measuring it, by taking these assessment time points of the Brain Health Index, that's helping us to really understand what that spectrum looks like and really track that over time. And then that leads to the last one, which is improve or maintain as we age, rather than accepting this trajectory of decline, but instead by using strategies and equipping people with strategies and the support that they need. How can we push brain fitness, mental fitness, brain health? How can we push that to be at its best? What does that look like? And it's different for all of us. So these are the big overarching goals of what we're trying to accomplish with the project. I'll remind you all that it is a 10-year study. It's longitudinal. We want to look at these changes over time and how, when you do improve, how long can you hold on to those improvements, things like that. So we'll dig a little deeper into more specifically how we're starting to answer some of those questions, and also the research that we are building upon. We are really fortunate to have incredible leaders of this project. Dr. Sandy Chapman is our chief director and founder of the Center for Brain Health and is leading the Brain Health Project, along with some really amazing co-leaders, Dr. Jeff Ling, Dr. Ian Robertson, Tom Leppard, and then Georgianne and Admiral McRaven are our national spokespersons. But everyone else listed here are really top-notch scientists that are at the forefront of brain health. Typically, most research of the brain is just looking at injury or disease or detection. And these folks here are really on that leading edge of health. What does it look like to push performance? What does it look like to maximize and optimize that so that our brains can keep up with our bodies as we age? So just want to give a shout out to these incredible folks here, and also want you to get excited to know that we get to benefit. Not only do we get to benefit from their minds, but you do too. As participants, we are gleaning from their knowledge and their discoveries, and we're taking this and rolling it out as part of the training content that you'll get to access. You get to benefit from really finding out kind of what is, just the leading research in the field, and knowing how you can transform that into strategies and ways to really apply it to your everyday life to make a difference. So that being said, our agenda for today is that we are going to cover some of the research that underlies our SMART training. That's the cognitive training, those strategies that you get access to through the training on your dashboard. Then we're going to talk about the current discoveries that we've made so far with this current project. We're about really a year in. And then the future directions of what are some of the smaller nested studies, and then where are areas that we're hoping to learn more about. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Lori Cook, and she's going to cover some of the history of our different cognitive training research.
Thank you so much, Julie. So yes, as she said, my name is Lori, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Clinical Research here at the Center for Brain Health. And I'm also able to coordinate a lot of our research efforts specific to our Brain Health Project. But what I want to spend some time sharing with you today is some of the background work, really foundational research that has been done here at the center, as well as through some collaboration, really establishing our cognitive training. For those of you who are in the project and well on your way, engaging with our training, as you may know, where we kicked off is with our SMART training. And SMART, it is an acronym. It stands for Strategic Memory, Advanced Reasoning Training, or Tactics. And there's some wonderful research that's really been in the works for, between the last 10 to 20 years, establishing this approach. And so we wanted to share some of that with you before we dig into some of what we're already learning through the project itself. So first off, I find it really interesting that this SMART approach, these really foundational principles when we think of how we engage the brain in these high impact cognitive processes, this approach was really born in the context of adolescent reasoning, essentially working and observing middle schoolers, young high school students. What we were really seeing was that, kids were not fully tapping into their brain's potential. And in fact, the first approach engaging SMART in a research context was in the middle school classroom. In fact, one of our largest published studies to date was with middle schoolers. In fact, I think we had over 900 public middle school students. So these are 7th and 8th grade students in this study. And in particular, as you see there, 556 of them received SMART in their classroom. And we were able to compare these students with 357 of their peers who did not receive SMART, but did have the opportunity to do some of this assessment pre and post. And the findings were really phenomenal. Not only were we able to really demonstrate positive gains in regard to, things that SMART really taps into, critical thinking and reasoning, but we also saw some interesting impact on aspects like their fact recall, for example. And this was not the case with students who did not receive SMART. We were also able to explore the impact on their academic achievement, looking at, state mandated standardized testing, for example, and seeing the impact not just in, their approach to reading, for example, but also how that translated to other academic subjects and areas. And this study in particular really also wanted to demonstrate the potential for impact here for students of all levels, essentially. So we were working especially with schools coming from socioeconomically disadvantaged communities, and really seeing the impact and change that could be made there as well. So this was an exciting way for us to really dig in, kick off the SMART approach. And really the next study that I want to feature and share with you was our foray now into SMART with healthy adults, right? What about the healthy adult brain? In particular, those who might be in that retirement or senior stage in life. And this was a study that actually came about as a partnership with, here in Dallas, the Cooper Clinic. Many of you may be familiar with it. It's often regarded as sort of the birthplace of aerobic exercise, really enhancing our understanding of the especially cardiovascular benefits of physical exercise. Well, we had the opportunity to do a randomized clinical trial, engaging individuals not only in SMART training, but there was also a group that did physical training, so we could really compare the impacts of these approaches. But what I want to share with you in particular to come out of this study is some of the remarkable brain imaging findings. We were really able to demonstrate how the brain can change, when one really takes on and adopts these strategies in their day-to-day. And there were 3 areas in particular that we really saw some amazing impact. One, and what I'm showing you here now, is an overall brain blood flow. So brain blood flow is crucial for the physical health of our brain, just like it is for our bodies. And it's really interesting. We saw over the course of this study, so they were engaging in SMART for a 12-week period, so essentially 3 months here. The change we saw was as high as an increase of 12% in their whole brain blood flow for some individuals. And for most in the group, it was average of around 8% increase. Just to give you some perspective as to how impressive that is, we lose on average about 2% of our brain's blood flow with every decade of life beginning in our 20s. So to see a gain of 8 to 12% after just 3 months' time is really remarkable, and one that I think excited not just us, but others in the scientific community here, looking at that potential for cognitive training. Now, it wasn't just blood flow. Another really crucial area we explored in terms of brain imaging. So here, again, we're doing functional brain imaging. So not just catching still images of the brain, but really how the brain is communicating, activating. And what we saw here was some greater, what we call functional connectivity in some key networks in the brain. So, we've learned, as we've learned more about the brain, that we don't just function with this region here, this region here. It's largely about networks and crosstalk in the brain. And for example, one of the networks that we looked at, and that's abbreviated here, is called the Central Executive Network. So in other words, that network of the brain that really comes online when you're doing things that require your higher order cognitive functions, that planning, reasoning, decision-making, problem solving, things that are really driven by these frontal networks in the brain. And we actually saw in this study an increase, on average of over 30% in the functional connectivity for this key network in the brain. And you can see in the slide here, we're actually showing that activation pattern for the group at the first time point, the second time point, which was in the middle of training, so about 6 weeks in, and then the third time point, which was after training, after 12 weeks. And what was exciting is we were starting to see those changes at the midpoint that were really not only maintained, but became even stronger at that final point. So it really says a lot for, how, as you engage these strategies, it can impact how that network can communicate its effectiveness and efficiency in driving those functions in the brain. But there was one more area where we were really, I will say, surprised. Not only were we looking at functional changes, but we also wanted to explore some of these more structural aspects in the brain. And one of the findings to come out of this study was we actually saw some improved structural connectivity in this key white matter tract in the brain. Now, when we think of the brain, we often think of the gray matter, the cortex, but equally important is the white matter in the brain. I think of this as like looking under the hood at really those communication pathways, those connections that allow all these functions to happen. And this was looking at the structural integrity of, in particular, this pathway that connects the frontal regions with some key areas in the temporal lobe, which really is a hallmark of learning and memory functions. So really crucial for some of these functions. And this is one area we saw, especially by that third time point, some improved structural connectivity in that white matter tract, which I think contributes to the functional improvements that we saw as well. So really exciting to think about how engaging in these cognitive tools can not only change how your brain is functioning, but even can enhance the structure of it as a result. So there's another study I wanted to feature where we have applied questions around SMART. And that was, in this case, with a military population. So we received some funding from the Department of Defense to conduct a randomized clinical trial with individuals who were veterans, but were back in the community, who had experienced a brain injury. And, these were folks that had not just had their brain injury within the last few months. Most of them were in what we call the chronic stage. So in fact, I think the average time that it elapsed since the injury was about 8 years, and it was even as high as 30 years in some cases. But we wanted to engage them in these SMART strategies and really compare that to, well, what if we just engage in kind of teaching them about the brain, something we call the brain health workshop as a control. And again, we were really excited to see not only some meaningful cognitive benefits, in these complex reasoning, memory, how that translated to their daily life responsibilities, but we also saw some really marked improvements in their self-reported symptoms of depression and stress. And these were individuals, many of them who, were dealing with aspects such as post-traumatic stress. So this was huge. This was really the first time we had seen that impact, not just on the skills we were directly training, but even that spillover impact on aspects of well-being and certainly daily life too. And then we were also able to show some brain changes that could really be associated with some of these improvements. For example, we saw this dramatic increase in an area called the precuneus, which is really crucial for aspects such as emotional processing, perspective taking, again, things that we really see folks engaging as they do SMART. Now, we've really conducted a lot of research across different populations. We featured 3 here, but I'll give you a glimpse into some others. In fact, a lot of my own work at the center has been with youth with brain injury, ADHD. We've certainly done work even at the college level, such as with college student athletes. But we've also worked with some unique populations. For example, adults with bipolar disorder. We've seen some really neat translation of SMART to helping support them to meet their daily life goals, which can often be a challenge for folks with that diagnosis. And then we've also explored the impact for adults with mild cognitive impairment. So this really represents, a stage where there's been some cognitive decline that's significant, but it's not progressed to dementia. Sometimes folks with this diagnosis may be more likely to progress to dementia, but by no means do all folks with MCI also develop dementia. So we really wanted to explore what could be the value of SMART to potentially not only enhance function now, but also potentially stave off that progression for those who would otherwise experience dementia later. So a lot of really encouraging work that's been done, and anybody who is curious to take a deeper dive into some of this work and science, we're always happy to share. And I actually encourage you to check out our Center for Brain Health.org website, where most of these studies, you'll find opportunities to read descriptions of them and even link to the full articles and read up on those details as well. And now I'm actually going to pass the torch back to Julie to talk more about what we are learning now through your contribution by participating in the Brain Health Project.
Thanks, Lori. It's always fun to get to hear about just how many different groups and populations we've worked with and how these cognitive strategies really are not limited to any one context and can really be helpful really just at many different points in life. So really excited to get to share a bit more with you all about what you are actively contributing to. And now that you sort of have a bit of context of what we're building on. So I know some of the studies Lori shared, especially the great images about the structural and functional changes of the brain with SMART, that previously was done just, I think it was a 12-week period of time. And so the beauty of the study you are now participating in, of having kind of this longer time period of every 6 months, or, for as many years as you choose to participate, that's really helping us understand and measure what these benefits are over time, and how this can impact and increase performance across the lifespan, and really be proactive or perhaps even preventative at some point. So just know that's one of our big questions, is we've seen this to be extremely effective in these smaller time periods, but it's a much heavier lift to get people to continually engage and stay involved in the research and check in and get their assessments. So we just want you to know that we really appreciate that you are donating your time to science, and really also hope that you are benefiting from these strategies in your life. So I'm first going to cover the first paper that we published. We kicked off the BrainHealth Project, the pilot study, the initial pilot study. And if you were part of that original group, just shout out to you. Thank you. And we published this paper in March of last year from that initial group of about 200 people. And so you can Google this, it's open access, and you can read the full article, but I'm going to walk you through a few of the key findings and the high points from what we got to learn from that pilot study for the project. So basically, our first big question was wanting to know if the BrainHealth Index improved. So this was, the difference here is that everything was online and virtual through this online platform that we built. And so what we found was that some people went up a lot while others went down. But almost 80% of participants showed a positive change in their BrainHealth Index through engaging with training and coaching. And then about half of participants had at least a 10% increase in their index. We also wanted to know if there were effects of age or gender on changes in the index. Some people might think, well, younger people will do better. They're more familiar with using technology, or they just, being younger means that you can learn more easily. And what we found was that was not the case at all, that it didn't matter how old or young you are, but you could equally improve or experience changes in your index. And then same with gender. There were no gender differences found here. So because this is not a traditional randomized controlled trial, we don't have a control group that's, not getting access to all of this. And we designed it that way on purpose. We really believe that, this can be beneficial to everyone, and we don't want to withhold that. But we also, like I mentioned in the beginning, because there's such a wide range of what each person needs, that everyone needs a little something different. So you are your own control. When you take your first BrainHealth Index, oh no, did I freeze? Am I back? I think I might have froze for a minute. Okay. So you are your own control, and it's really you against you. And so it's really important for us to look at training utilization. Some people may engage a lot, and some people may engage very little, but they may experience similar changes and gains. And so that's something we really wanted to look at. And what we saw here was that the percent of training modules completed, the more training modules completed, especially the first bulk core of the SMART strategies. So the modules on, or rather the courses on strategic attention, integrated reasoning, and innovation, and then the application modules for those, that we saw that really caused some of the greatest changes up front in the index. So just want to encourage you, if you've not yet engaged with the training, or if you're in the midst of that, to keep on going. And it's not just about doing it and completing it, it's really about continuing to practice and apply that in your life. And I know we stress that with the Brain Healthy Habits, and our coaching is really about supporting you and figuring out how to do that in a way that really works for you and makes sense for your life. We also had questions about knowing if people would really adopt those habits and use them in their life. And so we got some really great just initial feedback from some of that early pilot study. We wanted to know if people could foster a more holistic understanding of brain health. Part of our mission is really to educate people in understanding that your brain is more than your GPA or your SAT score or your IQ, and really that this assessment is trying to show you your potential and really help you understand just the vast amount of things that your brain is responsible for. And so we were happy to see that people really found that that was clear and just understanding a more holistic picture. And then I don't know if you know, but we really built this entire platform from scratch that this research project is housed on and delivered to you on, and where you can access everything, as well as on our coaches side, being able to engage with you. So we wanted to know about the user experience and if people found it to be clear and easy to follow. And so also want to just mention that we are, because it is being built literally, we are, as we say, building the plane as we fly it. And so we hope that you notice and benefit from continued improvements. And it's so important. We really value getting your feedback. So when we send you little surveys, know that you really are truly helping contribute to enhancing the project, hopefully for yourself, but also for many more to come. And that's a big part of truly a work in progress as we're doing research. So where we are today, as we said, we launched this out of the DFW area. So you can see a few participants right in North Texas. But these little green dots represent zip codes all across the United States. And we currently have just shy of 10,000 participants that are consented to be a part of the project. And this spans outside of the United States. These shaded countries just show you that we've got participants really all over the world. We are still currently limited to English only on the platform. We do hope one day to be able to expand to multiple languages, but we are just getting started. So we are still really, I shared with you the key findings from that preliminary pilot. Since then, we've been rolling enrollment. And with probably a more public launch coming maybe later this year, or you get a sneak peek that we are going to be turning it into a mobile application. So that is in the works, and that will also help kind of widen our reach. But yeah, just want you to know that you are part of something that is global. We are calling this a brain health revolution in terms of just changing how people think about their brain. And then also feeding this engine that we get to learn from, and then take those results and serve them back up to you so you can benefit from them. So that's where we're currently at. If you're curious about a bit of the demographic breakdown of these 9,000 plus participants, this is what the age breakdown looks like. I know this is tiny font here, but this is 18 to 20 is the first one, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, and so on. So the majority of our participants are in their 60s, followed closely by those in their 50s and 70s. And we are really trying to emphasize and get younger participants to adopt brain healthy habits early. So if you have young folks in your life, definitely pass this along to them. But of course, we still welcome with open arms people of all ages, 18 to 100. We do have a youth pilot that is in the works for those ages 10 to 17. And you can, I think if you click on the brainhealthproject.org page, you can click onto the youth one if you want to find out more about that. But this is what our age breakdown looks like. And then as far as gender goes, I want to give a big shout out. It is Women's History Month, and I know International Women's Day was this week. And so thank you to the women who have been incredibly proactive and just really shown a lot of enthusiasm and support in terms of just jumping right in and wanting to really learn what you can do. And so thank you to the incredible women out there that are participating in this. And I would just also follow that with a rally cry for men and everyone to know that brain health is for everyone. And so if you've got men in your life, we want to also encourage them to be a part of this. All right, so I do want to just share with you a couple other numbers. We have currently 6,813 people who have completed their first Brain Health Index. And so this is so exciting. And like I mentioned, so important to us being able to learn from you and capture this. But one time point, this is great. This sets a baseline, but one time point really isn't enough to be able to learn. So it's so critical that you follow up and take your second time points and each time point after that, so that we can really track those changes over time. So if you have another index that's coming up, be sure to set aside the time for that and know that that is largely our biggest metric for how we are going to learn from this research study. We have about 4,000 people who have completed coaching calls. This is not just the first coaching call, but all coaching calls in total is our total number there. And just want to encourage you, if you have not already tried out coaching, that a lot of people are really receiving a lot of benefit from that. We get great feedback. And so that's a really neat way to just understand more and to stay motivated and encouraged. So just want to give a little insight into how many people are benefiting from that and participating in coaching. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Lori, who's going to talk a bit more about the directions that we're headed and some of the more nested or sub-studies that we have in the project.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, we're so excited at the momentum we've already built and really the capabilities that this online platform has afforded us to ask some really important questions when it comes to brain health. So in fact, Julie mentioned this concept of nested studies, and I'll show you just kind of some of the opportunities that's afforded us. And so think of these as like chances to explore unique populations or the impact of different brain health tools or trainings, or even integrating aspects such as devices like wearables, exploring that possibility down the road. So just to give you a snapshot of some of the things that are in the works or emerging now, unique populations. We have a wonderful recruiting relationship with a physician who's specifically interested in exploring the cognitive impact related to undergoing hormone replacement therapy. So women who are undergoing that approach to treatment, we're able to use our platform to explore the potential impact on their brain health. We're also able to explore, for example, breast cancer survivors, what's been the impact of their experience, with chemo, brain fog, some of these aspects. Let's use this platform as an opportunity to learn more about brain health and how to promote and support brain health for these individuals. We also have some wonderful efforts focused on caregivers. So, for example, caregivers of a spouse or parent who has a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment or dementia, what can we do to allow them to get a better insight into their own brain health or unique tools to support them in that journey? And then I have a particular soft spot, of course, for emerging adults. I've done so much in youth, and we're seeing now, what about this transition age, between say 18 to 25, kind of college aged, or folks who are just setting out on their career. We've seen that the pandemic in particular has had a major impact on individuals at this stage in life. So what can we do to learn a lot more, again, about supporting our emerging adults? And then again, opportunities over the life of the project. You'll be engaging in a lot more than just SMART. We'll be bringing in other sorts of brain health tools and content. Again, this is where we have wonderful collaborators that can help inform. For example, you'll have an opportunity to engage in a brain training that's also a cognitive approach, but more focused on specific thinking skills or honing some of those fundamental processes. We'll also have an opportunity to explore things more around, say, dietary habits, better understanding that gut-brain connection. Just for starters, again, a lot more tools to come. And then chances to explore, again, leading edge devices. How can we relate, tie this into data from aspects like Fitbit, for example. So really setting up the platform is something that can engage with these other tools as folks are interested in opting into those components. And then one that we're doing here that I think is important, we're continuing to do our brain imaging work. Here at the Center for Brain Health, we have our own dedicated imaging center. It is research dedicated and really engaging the latest technology when it comes to functional imaging and being able to see what is the impact, how does the brain change given these tools. So in fact, for those of you, especially who might be local to our Dallas area, we are still in the process of conducting this first stage study for the brain imaging component of the project. We're aiming to have 200 participants go through. They'll receive multiple scans. In other words, they'll get one right when they start the process. They'll have another one 6 months later, and then commit to annual scans for the duration of that 10 years. And we're well on our way. We've already worked with 120 participants, and of those, 80 have already completed both their first scan as well as their second one 6 months later. So we'll actually start digging into some of that data to produce an initial publication on that in the months to come. But we're still looking for more folks to help us round this really crucial part of the project out. In particular, as Julie mentioned, the women have really stepped up and raised their hand, but we would love to engage more men in this effort too, specifically men between the ages of 18 to 50. So if you do know folks who, one, are local to the Dallas area, could come and do those scans, again, more than one over time, and then two, that they have not already started the process of the project. So they would be new enrollees in the project. If you know folks that might really be interested and want to jump on board for something like that, please feel free to spread the word for us. We actually have a QR code there that you can scan that'll take people directly to the interest form for that aspect. But we appreciate you being ambassadors for this really important part of the project as well. And then one other piece I wanted to mention, we also have a great effort called our Brain Healthy Workplace. So that's another great thing about this platform, is it's allowing us to really provide, some experiences that can be customized or kind of tailored to groups. So one effort is focused on the workplace. There are companies that are looking for solutions for their employees. I think especially we've learned over the pandemic what a priority that's become for so many companies. So we do have the ability to work with the company directly to provide, through that project platform, something that can be of great benefit in delivering some of these tools. So again, if you're involved with a company that might be interested in exploring that, I encourage you to check out on our website, our centerforbrainhealth.org, brainhealthy/workplace, and we're happy to give you more information on that. But that's been the amazing thing about this platform, is really affording us the opportunity to not only ask some important research questions, but also allow access to things at a greater scale than we've ever been able to do before. So we continue to really be driven by this, not only better brain, but also hopefully how that translates to better life and ultimately a better world for all of us. So we're excited that you are on board and have been so invested in helping us move this forward. And I think we've got, some minutes left for those of you who do want to ask your questions. We're happy to stick around. I know we've answered several, so thank you for folks who are curious to know, how you could access those articles, or are we still recruiting? Yes, absolutely. Please continue to send folks our way. And then it looks like, here's a question that was specific about our university population. Would there be opportunity to work with university or college athletes during their athletic careers? Most athletes go through the program anywhere from 1 to 6 years. Okay, so as a coach, we're really seeing the impacts of COVID on their mental health. Gosh, thank you for sharing and speaking up about that. I would say absolutely. In fact, if there is interest among a particular team or organization, reach out, because yes, we've worked, in fact, in some of our research with different groups who are in the process going through their program. For example, I had the pleasure of working with West Point Athletics, or West Point football specifically, several years ago, and doing SMART as well as other things with them. We have a lot of research also around concussion and some of those aspects that can be relevant in the context of athletics too. So absolutely, we could explore interest at an organization level, and you are absolutely welcome, of course, to encourage folks to enroll at an individual level as well. But please reach out. We'd love to engage.
I did want to I don't think I mentioned this, but yes, in terms of recruiting, we are seeking to enroll 120,000 participants across this 10 years. So that's about 12,000 a year. We're well on our way with our being kind of in the first year, but absolutely, please spread the word. And then someone had asked if there was an age cutoff, and no, it's between ages 18 and up. So there's no limit there. Let's see. Okay.
Let's see, I see another question about, do we have any information on the impact of the Brain Health Project on, brain structure for people diagnosed with a mild cognitive impairment, or, can engaging with this help combat neurodegeneration and loss? No, I appreciate your question. This is something we absolutely want to learn more about as well. I shared we have done some preliminary research using SMART specifically with folks with a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment. We even have done some work engaging not only assessment and some of these SMART strategies, but even different aspects of neurostimulation, opportunities to really enhance the impact. And again, preliminary findings have been very encouraging. We have a lot more to learn, which is why we are in our current project, especially engaging in some efforts around caregivers and really seeing how we can support the whole that whole family unit, but I appreciate your question. And so happy to also share some of those studies or work we've already done in MCI, as well as keep you up to date on what we are continuing to learn. Because yes, I think there's a lot of potential in exploring possibilities for enhancing function or potentially even building resilience for the brain.
Yes. Okay, I have a great question here that says, I've been on hiatus for a while. Is it detrimental? Can I continue without problems? And so I love that question. We understand that life gets busy and there's going to be periods of time where you may have more time to devote and some where you may have less. And so it is not detrimental. It's sort of baked into the process, if you will. So always feel free to jump back in if you feel like you haven't engaged with the training for a while or you've missed taking an index. You can jump back in at any time. So know that we would rather have you come back than not come back at all. And so we really value you continuing to just engage when you can. Let's see.
One question I see about how long is the brain sub-study scan, that imaging at the Dallas location, and will the results be shared with us along with things we can do to improve? Thank you for that. We actually hope to wrap up this initial sub-study, so that first 200 participants this year, by the end of this year. There's potential we could even get out some initial findings again in the months to come. And yes, one of the things we want to continue to do is keep y'all apprised as we do put out papers and asking you questions and have new opportunities to not only disseminate that knowledge, but then think about next steps. What does that mean? How can we translate that to us? Absolutely. In fact, don't be surprised if we don't have a town hall specifically about that as that information becomes available.
Had a question about if there are people who don't qualify. And so, yeah, the purpose of this study is to look at healthy adults. So they also ask, do they need to be a risk for Alzheimer's? And we actually say, yeah, we really are looking for, there is a screener in the beginning that you probably went through quickly and may not remember, but yeah, it does ask you questions of if you've had a history of things like injury or stroke. And the main thing there being, if you're not able to function independently, then this study really isn't appropriate. So we're trying to understand healthy and how we can push performance for healthy.
Now, I will say I appreciate a question that comes up a lot is, do we have any plans for studies on the post-COVID effects on the brain? We do. I know this is a question that a lot of folks are asking. We want to better understand not only long COVID, but again, more specifically, the impacts on the brain. So there are some aspects in the works. Again, we have some great collaborators, folks who are working directly with populations that have been impacted by COVID. So stay tuned, more to come. And you may have already experienced yourself, even answering some surveys, follow-up questions about your own experience with COVID and the impacts. So I encourage anytime you have those opportunities to answer one of these surveys, it really is informing, a new direction or opportunity that we can explore in the project. So that information you provide absolutely helps us here as well. So stay tuned. We have a lot of interest, a lot to learn about COVID.
I have a question here about the ACE cognitive assessment, which I think is actually, I'll take a minute to just address that because so we have the current Index, which you've seen kind of those different components around the wheel. And so you take kind of as part of the normal assessment flow for cognition, you have those more specific thinking, or sorry, complex thinking tasks. And so ACE is the specific thinking portion of that. So that's going to assess things like processing speed, memory, working memory. And so that is, just know that it's not fully integrated into the index, but it is a part of that. So I know it feels very separate, but yes, that is normal. And we would love if you could take it. And also we'll just say you only need to take it once. So you just take it that one time, and then you would take it just one time each time you take your Brain Health Index. So we have a lot of different, that's a partner with Adam Ghazaleh, who's an incredible researcher up at UCSF. And so just know that as we are kind of doing these collaborations with different scientists, you may see some things that are kind of, I guess, don't look as seamlessly part of the project, but that's just because we have such great collaborators and are wanting to be able to offer and learn from as many different tools as we can. I see that we are right at time. Did you have any last questions you wanted to address? I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them, but thank you so much for tuning in with us today. I hope you learned something more about the research that we're doing and are really excited to continue participating. We're so grateful for you all, just your time, your dedication, your interest, and just know that we couldn't do it without you. And so you guys are truly the fuel and the engine of this giant project. So we really appreciate you, and know that we plan to have many more town halls to come, just as we continue to learn. And as Lori said, we have a lot of things in the works. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Bye-bye.